Well, I became involved with RP Missions largely because I met Matt Filbert, and he was encouraging me to consider serving in a team in France. He didn't have too many French speakers available, and so that was something I wanted to do. I was also very familiar with the church situation in France and the need for missionaries to go over there, and I was a French major. One thing I appreciate about this organization is that they do try to find people who have particular gifts, not only for missions, also in the language areas as well. If we're going to talk about foreign missions, it's obviously important to be able to communicate the gospel to people in their language. I also had several friends who had been a part of RP Missions before, and they were very encouraging for me to consider this opportunity. I was looking for an opportunity also to develop my gifts. I was interested in the gospel ministry, and I believed it was an important thing for me to consider to be involved with the mission field for that reason as well. And I would have to say that my hopes were absolutely fulfilled in that regard. I'm very pleased to say that I was able to develop, I believe, a much greater heart for missions because of that. Missionary work overseas was something that I was interested in. As things turned out, I did end up becoming a pastor in the United States of America. And again, I think part of RP Missions' impact in my life has been that it gave me an introduction to the Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America. I was previously a member of the Reformed Presbyterian Church of Ireland, and it was a good opportunity for me to broaden my horizons, to meet people from other Reformed congregations. It was a good opportunity for me also to put into practice those lessons that I had learned overseas in a home congregational setting. One of the things I've really appreciated about RP Missions over the years is the stress that they place on church-based missions. It's not an organization that likes to do a parachute drop, drop a lot of tracts and then leave, but we do work with organized congregations, and I think that's very important, not only for young people to understand the importance of church and missions overseas, but also when they return from those mission trips, to take the lessons that they have learned in those church-based mission locations and apply those lessons at home as well. I do think that it's certainly a good opportunity for any young person who would like to broaden their horizons as well and appreciate that the church is much bigger than the local congregation. Again, something that I would say from experience is that I learned not only that the church is bigger in terms of going overseas and seeing the work of the kingdom there, but also finding that even within a team, working with people from overseas. Coming from Ireland, I was working with a lot of Americans, and it was a good opportunity for me to do, I guess, a little bit of cross-cultural ministry, not only to the people we were serving in a foreign location, but also to learn to work together as Christians from different cultures in a missions environment. That's a very enriching experience. It's important, I think, for us sometimes to break out of that tunnel vision we sometimes can have in a local congregational setting. Appreciate the church is bigger, not simply reaching out to unbelievers in different lands, but serving alongside other nations on a mission team and finding how we are expressing the same gospel, but doing so perhaps from different cultural perspectives. So all of these are ways in which I find it very enriching. I certainly would encourage any young person who would like to have missions experience to consider the organization. This may not be one of the main parts to encourage you, but it's also very reasonably priced. I've served with this mission organization a number of times, and having compared it with other organizations, I've just been particularly impressed at how reasonable it has been, particularly on a student budget. Summer jobs are needed, there are finances that are tight, and it was another thing I think that was very useful for me, that I was able to afford to go on this team without damaging the wallet too much as well. There's definitely an advantage to going for a longer period of time, 3 to 6 weeks, which is usually the average for RP Missions teams. I served with the Irish RP Church's missions program, the GO teams, and usually they lasted 1 week, sometimes slightly over that. I suppose you could argue that there were benefits in a smaller team in that when things got tense, you only had to make it to the end of the week. And of course there are team dynamics that are different with every team. What I found with RP Missions with a longer period of time is that you learn to overcome those difficulties, and you don't simply swallow hard and move on, but you learn to work together as a team, and that's something that you do have an advantage of. You have that opportunity with a longer period of time. I think another advantage of a longer period of time also is that you get to experience more of the life of the church that you're serving. That's very important because sometimes when we come in as a short-term mission team, we're there for a week, we leave, we haven't had much opportunity to really see the day-to-day life of the church, particularly since that church will perhaps change their regular activities for that 1 week. But with a longer period of time, what we find is that the regular routine is already in place and we slot ourselves into that routine. And it gives us an opportunity to see the life of the church in a foreign location. It may be very different from what we're used to, but then again, it's an opportunity for us to expand our experience, to stretch our ideas of what daily life in a congregation is as well. If you've been involved with the Theological Foundations for Youth program at the RP Seminary, I would highly recommend RP Missions as a logical next step. You've already found a great deal of equipping theologically. What do I believe? Why do I believe it? Here's a golden opportunity for you to not simply have a head full of knowledge, but to see that knowledge put into practice in a mission situation. We don't simply puff our heads up with knowledge so that we can be filled with pride, but a mission situation will humble you, it will stretch you, and it will give you an opportunity to share with others what you have learned, and above all, to share the gospel of Christ with those people as well. Coming out of a high school situation, moving on to college, making decisions about what your future calling may be, the mission field is a great place for you to go, not only to perhaps rule out missions if that's something God is not calling you to, but of course to make you consider, is this something that God wants me to do on a longer term basis? Many young people who go to TFY find themselves on an RP missions team, and we're seeing already that some of those young people are considering missions as a lifetime commitment, and it's something that you don't want to take as a light decision. Therefore, I would encourage you to consider a short-term mission team, if it's possible, even a number of short-term mission teams, and if possible, to try to vary where you go. A lot of our young people go on a missions team. Let's say they go to Scotland and they love Scotland and they want to keep going back to Scotland, and that's great that you develop a bond with that congregation and that place of ministry. But I would encourage you to also consider a team perhaps here in the United States of America, or to go somewhere a little further afield, maybe where there's something of a language barrier even, because missions, of course, is not simply getting to pick where I want to go. It's about where the Lord wants to send me. And even if it's a team that you may not have been as interested in to begin with, sometimes it's good for you to put yourself in that situation where you're stretched a little further than you might otherwise have been, and it will give you, I think, a clearer understanding of what is involved in a missionary enterprise.